I know this show isn't about this, but people don't know that my mother threw me in the trash can when I was born. Her throwing me in that trash can was the best thing that she did for me.
Hey, y'all. Welcome to the Sweet Taboos podcast. Welcome, welcome. If this is your first time joining us, thank you for stopping by. And if you're returning, thank you for joining us. We love your company each and every time. Today's topic is about one close to our hearts and very sensitive. And it is about homelessness. And we have a fantastic guest, Miss Crystal Ifekoya. I feel like I butchered it, but you're going to help
You
me.
did a good job. You did a good job. Good job.
And she is the CEO of Boss Encounters and WHO, which is WHOW, Women Helping Other Women. She is a professional in business management, marketing, and so much more. Hi, Miss Crystal.
Hello, hello. How are you?
I'm blessed. Welcome on.
And
Yes.
highly favored. I'm so glad to
Amen.
be here this after or this tonight. Tonight. I
Yeah.
gotta get that in
Right.
my
It's been a long day.
Oh my goodness.
It's been a day. But I really appreciate you coming on, sharing your time with us. If you could introduce yourself for those who are unaware.
So, my name is again Crystal Ifekoya, and I am the founder of WOW Women Helping Other Women, and we empower women to go back to school, advance in their career, or start their own business. And so
Beautiful,
many other
beautiful.
things, but that's the short version of that.
I know when I met you in August, I was just taken back. We lost Miss Tiffany.
I see.
But we're going to keep moving. I think she might come back in, but I do appreciate you meeting me after the first initial meeting because we haven't met since then. And now it's holiday time. We are about to move into 2026. Can you believe it?
Yes.
Are you
It
ready
came
for the
so
new year?
fast.
It really
I'm trying to
did.
be. I'm trying to be. I
Right.
am
I'm getting set
anticipating
up.
great things
Mm-hmm.
happening soon. Um,
Mm-hmm.
like I was saying a minute ago, um, I have a book coming out, so I'm excited about that.
Oh my
Starting
gosh.
the year with that and book release and all the things.
Oh, amazing. That's going to be started the new year on a high. I know it. And
Hmm.
congratulations to you. I one day
Thank
hope to write
you.
a book as well. So it's just inspiring to see where it can start and how it ends. And it's really just beginning when you release the book. So I'm excited to follow your journey there. So as
Absolutely.
we bring in the homelessness topic, number one, how did you become homeless?
So I had two children. Well, I had one child when I was 15. And when I had that child, my grandmother, I lived with my grandmother for when I first had my child for about 3 months. And uh, she had received a notice that she was over capacity. And
Mm,
of course, she would have let me stay there, but it was time for me to branch out and start doing adult things since I was already doing things that were like an adult. So
mm.
I had got into the housing program, but in the midst of that, I didn't even have my apartment for 3 months. I was
Wow.
15. I had high
Mm-hmm.
school friends, and my house became the kicking it spot. And it
Mm.
happened so fast that I didn't even see it coming. And before I knew it, that first in just 3 months, my house was investigated. I had been reported for having
Investigated.
teen activities and parties and all the things. And one of the people that was at my house had left a baggie under my daughter's bed. And when they came and
Oh,
did the inspection, they found it and they gave me 48 hours to move out. So I
Oh.
couldn't go back to housing because I was on Tulsa housing at the time. I couldn't go back to housing. I had at that time, it was very hard. I wasn't with my baby father at that time. I didn't have a real strong support system other than my grandmother, but she was raising so many children. So my only option was to go into a shelter. So that
Mhm.
landed me directly in a shelter with one child. And while there, I met a guy and I got pregnant again.
Mhm.
Uh, so two children before I was 18 years old living in a shelter.
Wow.
So my second child happened while I was living in the shelter.
How was that as a young parent, a teen parent, and navigating school and living in a place that is not your home with children? I mean, I can only imagine the state of mind in that
It
kind
was
of
hard.
predicament.
It was hard. It was frustrating. In the midst of that, my mother, my father, and both of my baby daddies all went to prison. So it
What?
wasn't,
Hold on.
yeah, the same time frame. Everybody went to prison.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
my biological real father had 3 years in prison. My mother had 5 years. One baby daddy had
My.
10 years, and another baby daddy had 18 years. So it was just like I had to thug it out. I had to figure it out, and I had to figure it out fast.
Oh my
While staying
gosh.
there, I lived in a shelter called the Madonna House, and it was specifically for women that are pregnant. So,
Mhm.
or just recently had a child. But their whole mode was to get me to try to, I won't say that that was their whole mode. I will say how do I say this without being basically a lot of the people that go through the Madonna House, they were wanting them to adopt their children out to other families. That's a
Oh.
nice way to put that. Um, and I was not willing to do that. That was not an
Mhm.
option for me. And I remember when the lady at the Madonna House, we had a day every month that the women would come and take our children
Oh
and
my
love on
gosh.
our children while we got a break. But I didn't see anything wrong with it. You know, I'm letting a mother play with my child, not knowing that that
Mm.
mother had no child. And my child could have became their child, but that wasn't the case. I remember when Mag came to me. Mag Sullivan is her name. She was an amazing lady. They had life skills. They had parenting classes, nutrition classes. We learned how to cook. We learned how to be a better person. We learned how to be a mother, and they had resources, gas vouchers if you had a car, bus vouchers if you rode the bus.
That's
There
good.
was just a lot of resources. And I remember Matt coming to me because I dropped out of school. I dropped out not even 2 months before school was over. I
Mm.
dropped out because I didn't have art and foreign language, but I had more credits than you need to even graduate. I had a
Mhm.
3.86 grade point average. I was not your typical student. I was above average with two children and fought to get through it there, thinking I was going to walk across the stage with my friends. And I wasn't. That was not going to be my portion. So I
Mhm.
dropped out because they told me I wasn't going to walk across the stage. I wasn't going to go to prom. I couldn't go to prom because I wasn't graduating. So it was just
Wow.
all these factors,
Mhm.
and I felt defeated. I'm like, I'm living in a shelter with two kids, no support system, and the system is just constantly failing me because how do
Mhm.
you get all the way to high school and not have what you need to graduate. Like someone missed their
Right.
mark. My guidance
Right.
counselor, I don't even know her name. And no slight to her, it's probably good that I don't know her name, but how do you let someone get all the way, take trigonometry, 3.86 grade point average, and you know they have two children? How do
And you
you let them
missing
get that
stuff.
far and you miss some vital parts in making sure that they graduate? So
Right.
those
Mhm.
are the types of things that I just kind of slip through the cracks. But so I'm in front of this Miss Mag, and she's like, "You're not in school, you have no plan, and you have two children. What are you going to do? Because I really think it would be in your best interest to adopt out your children." And I remember when she said it, like this sadness came over me, like this sadness and this fear. You're
Mhm.
about to try to take the very thing, the only thing that I care about in this world, you're about to rip that away from me. I said, I will move out today. You don't have to worry about me. If this is
Mhm.
what it's going to be, I will leave today. I said, but what you will not do is take my children from me. I said, I will stay in a cardboard box before I allow you to take my children away from me. And
Mm.
she was like, well, Miss Crystal, you seem to be pretty sharp. So, what I want you to do, you're going to have to go back to school. You're going to have to get your GED. You're going to have to fight to get that. And she was like, you need a higher education to be able to take care of these children. They deserve it. And she was like, if I ever see you, she was like, I'll help you get a place. But if I ever see you back here again, we will take your children away from you. And that's all it took for me to go from homeless to my first apartment. They helped me to get my first apartment, and the rest I just got to thank God for the path that I was on. But there was a lot of scary moments when you're staying in the shelter, and I didn't have the typical shelter experience. I didn't have the shelter where there's cots in the middle of there's beds lined up. I lived in a townhome in a very prominent area. It was a mini mansion. It was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. They had bedrooms. I had my own bedroom with my children. They had mahogany staircases and floors, and like everything was just so regal.
The
So it
shelter?
wasn't like, yeah, yeah. I had an interesting experience. So it was a shelter, but in the middle of the shelter, it was not a shelter. It was God's hand on my life. So I
Hmm.
think about other people's experience of a shelter and what I had. I've went to go visit Salvation Army. I know what their shelters look like, and I look at that and I look at what I had, and I'm further grateful that God was taking care of me, that He made
Mhm.
sure that my every need was met. And though I lived in a shelter for 2 years, it was
That
as
is a
if God
long
was
time.
saying, yeah, 2 years, like 2 years from the time I was 17 until I was 19. And that's how long it took for them to get me off of the ban list from housing. And I was
Oh.
on housing from there from 2019 until 2003, for so like 3.5 years. And I have not lived back on housing ever since.
What an accomplishment. I mean, seeing the bottom, being in the bottom is one thing, and to get out of the bottom is another thing. And I love that you already preluded into what your shelter experience was like. My mother and I, when we were experiencing homelessness back in, what was it, 2019, 2020, right around COVID time, we stayed in two shelters, and the feel about them was different. You know, when you first get to that spot in your mind, like, oh, okay, I really don't have my own bed. where am I gonna go? Where am I gonna sleep? And there's like this safety, this thing about it in your head. It's like, am I gonna be safe? Is something gonna happen to me? And when I thought about shelter, I thought about what you just said, the beds lined up in a row, and it's just like, I don't know if Salvation Army looks like that, but just
It
that image
does.
in your mind is scary, to say the least. But I love how you shared what it looked like and give us a visual picture, because it's everyone's homelessness experience is different. But I do want to know, how did you cope with the homelessness? Again, at that time you had two kids, and you finishing up your GED, and you got people trying to take your kids. You had so much to juggle, and you had, oh my gosh, you had young children, and then the fathers are not available. Literally not available. How did you cope?
For me, I feel like I was in some type of survival mode. Like God had my mind, and I was going through this stuff, but I was present, but I was not present. It was like my
Mhm.
mind was to the future. I was trying to get to where I wanted to, where I saw myself getting to. And I I gave you guys that shelter experience, but in 2012, um I had another shelter experience with all three of my girls. And I think that one was the most humbling because it wasn't the Madonna house. It was not the Madonna house. It was the domestic violence shelter. So I went from one extremity to a whole different extremity. And I will never forget, even with that experience, I was like, here I am again. I am back in a shelter. How did I get back here? How am I here? And with all three of my girls, they're older at this point. I have one that's in the ninth grade. I have another that is walking through, or actually, two of them in high school, and one of them is going to the third grade. So it was humbling, very humbling. That was more humbling than the first time because my children were little. They didn't know what was going on. But to walk through going through a shelter and having to tell my youngest one at the time, we're just in a hotel room, but we have to share the bathroom. So we told her it was just a hotel. She had no idea we were in a shelter. But my older two, they walked through that with me. They were just as sad as I was. We couldn't believe our family was still in a spot where they weren't able to help us in any type of way. And we were coming back from Dallas, Texas, and straight from a domestic violence situation. So it was disheartening, to say the
Mhm.
least, that I was in a spot like that, but even more that I again had made decisions that had landed me right back in the shelter.
Mm.
And my goal was to get out as fast as humanly possible. It was not going to be a 2-year term.
Mhm.
And it was different because this time it was a more open space, but again God had favor on me because even though they had the beds lined up, we were in one room, and what should have been several people in that room, it was only me and my girls in that room.
Mm.
So the other rooms had other people in them. So I was like, okay, God protected me yet again from being around everybody. And then, it were bunk beds, but I slept on the bottom. My two oldest ones slept on the top. My youngest one slept on the other bottom. So, and to them, it was just fun. They were like, oh my gosh, we have bunk beds and they have food and they had the gifts and all the things. So to them, they didn't miss much. But to me,
Mhm.
it was like, I can't believe I'm here. But I did not stay there long. And I also went back to the time that I was there in the shelter before. And that was the strength that I pulled from to hurry up and get out of that situation. So I was at that
Mm.
shelter for about 3 weeks before I was able to find a job, and I had the interview, and within not even a full month of being back in Tulsa, I had already landed a job, and within a month and a half I had my first house, my first duplex. So
Mhm.
that's how fast God worked it out. And when we first moved into my house or the duplex, we bought one air mattress and we all slept, or I had two, one for me and one for all of my girls. So we had two air mattresses and we slept on that until
Mhm.
we were able to get beds. And yeah, but just watching that climb of where we went from nothing again. We were in our car, we were sleeping in the car, all of the clothes, everything that I own, I lost it all except for what we had could put in that car. And the one night that we did sleep in the car, I was humbled by the experience, but God again, he was right there with us. Like, we were at Quick Trip, there were lights, and Quick Trip could have totally told us that we needed to leave. And they
Mhm.
didn't. They let us stay on the property, and there were lights, so it wasn't dark. And we stayed there. And the next morning, I had them go to the bathroom and get themselves together. It was like God had his hands on us, but he knows exactly what we need and when we need it.
Exactly.
And we had our one night car experience, 2 weeks in the shelter again, but we truly have not been back in the shelter since then.
Mm. Mm-mm-mm. I love how you talk about. I want to know more about how you stay humble in this experience. I mean, you slept in the car. You said you would do the cardboard box. You've been in the shelter. And now you've climbed out of that cycle, and we'll get to the cycle a little bit. But you've climbed out of that pitfall. How do you keep a good attitude and a humble mindset about that experience?
For me, I always look at it could be worse. And I know people that did have it worse. I have little
Mm,
sisters that their situation was actually worse than mine. Their situation, they didn't have a choice. They didn't have the experience that I had. And I always wanted their lives. And then when I realized what their lives was really like, I was like, I'm glad to have had my life, you know?
mm,
And I don't
mm,
want to tell my sister's story, but they went through a lot, being that they were with my mother who was on drugs. They were with her as she had her tangents and did certain things. She was on drugs when she had them. And so they
mm,
got to walk out that with them. They were living with my mother and their father when my mother went to prison, and their father had to raise them, and them not having their mother in the home and not really having my grandmother like I had. I felt their story, and I think what keeps me humble is just knowing that if I were in Africa or somewhere else, and I can't just say Africa, there's other people right here in the United States that are homeless, that are going through horrible situations, horrible living conditions, from
mhm,
hoarding and just filth all around them. I've seen these stories, I've heard these stories. So for me, I'm like, I was in this, but
mhm,
God showed me, He protected me in ways like the story about the mahogany stairs and,
mm,
just the nice house. I could have been at Salvation Army, or I could have been in some other shelter that was way worse. I could have been in a situation where, there are no running water, or, I mean, I know people like that. So I have to thank God for Him providing for me and sheltering me and thanking me. And something I've always told my children, I've always hold on to, is it'll be greater later. So
it
I
will be
kept
greater
saying it
later.
until greater became now.
Mm,
So eventually everything that we want to happen will be manifested, but we have to stay focused. And faith is something that I stand on. People say faith, but faith is trusting God that He's going to bring you through a situation. And on a whole nother level, faith, I that is my favorite word. And
Go
then
ahead,
I'm like,
preach.
do I even want that to be my favorite word anymore? Because I have to keep going through to get to the faith part. But on the
Right.
other side of the faith is tremendous. It's amazing. When you step out of your situation and you realize how much God walked you through a situation, regardless of how bad, it could have been worse. And I have to
Mhm.
remind myself that. What if there was no shelter to go through, too? What if I had days of just sleeping up under a bridge? I see these people. I seen a lady earlier today sleep under the bridge on the same street. Today, I drove on the same street as the shelter that I lived in until
Oh,
on Denver just before this call, like 2 hours ago. I was
wow.
on memory lane looking, and I see
Mm.
a woman with a blanket wrapped up. It's cold outside today. It could be colder, but it's still cold. And I'm thinking to myself, that could have been me. That could have been me
Mhm.
on the street. That was one of my sisters. She was sleeping on park benches. So
Mm.
I have to thank God because even though
Glory.
my situation is bad, it could have been worse.
Yeah, God
Right.
had bigger plans.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
He did.
Mhm.
And I remember a long time ago that someone said, your story is so powerful. Do you realize that you didn't go through that for yourself? That there's
Mhm.
other people that are going to hear your story
Mm,
and you're going to set them free and you're going to
Mm.
prevent them getting into situations and being in a violent domestic violence situation longer than they have to. You can prevent that. You can show them how having the wrong people around you, surrounding you, can affect your entire life. It can mess
Yes.
up everything you got going on
yes.
for having the wrong company and being
Mm.
around the wrong person at the wrong time. So I try to teach that to my girls. But what I will say, I dropped out of school. And I know this show isn't about this, but people don't know that my mother threw me in the trash can when I was born. Her throwing me in that trash can was the best thing that she did for me because honestly, her throwing me in that trash can is what gave me the
Yay.
motivation to keep getting up, knowing that it's not my portion in life. And God had a ram in the bush every single time. So she may have thrown me away as trash, but God used that to build
Come
me
on
up to
now.
be the
Hold
treasure.
on.
He
Woo,
gave me
hold on. Hold on. Look, my eyes are
Yeah.
starting to water. You getting the
Yes,
spirit
yes.
moving
Chills
now.
are going down my
Ah.
spine.
Oh my gosh.
I'm
Mm,
sitting in my miracle right now.
Mhm.
I think
Mm.
when I would be in the shelter. And
Glory.
I remember God saying,
mm,
can you see it changing? And for a while, I would just cry. When I first got to the shelter, I cried. I said, I have no family to
mm,
depend on, Lord. Like, nobody cares about me, not my mom, not my dad, not anybody. And I remember God
mm,
saying, but I care. And
Right.
I grew up Pentecostal. And when I went to this Madonna house, it was Catholic charities. We were taught that, Catholics were not who you need to be around. And without me bashing them, because I can't bash them at all. But what I will say is when I got there, on the windowsill, there was a little picture of Jesus on the windowsill. And I'm like, I thought
mm,
Catholics were not like this. I didn't know what Catholics was at that point. I was like, but that's Jesus. That's a little baby Jesus. What,
Mhm.
they believe in Jesus? I mean, that's how
mm,
oblivious I was to
Mm.
other religions and things of that time. And I got to see the love of God
mm.
through a different lens. I got to that God loves everybody, regardless of what your religion is. And it
Mm-hmm.
reminds me of the story in the Bible when
Mhm.
Ishmael was born. That
Mm-hmm.
is
Mhm.
Abraham's firstborn blood. And Hagar, she was casted out by Sarah. A lot of people just hated that fact, but I feel like I
Mhm.
was discarded just like that, like
Mm-hmm.
Ishmael, if you think about it. I was the firstborn to my mom and my supposed to be dad, and I was discarded
Mhm.
because I wasn't what they wanted. So, with that, even in the discard, I remember her when she was in that wilderness, God blessed her. And she said, He is the God that sees me.
Thank
Aw, thank you
you.
so
We
much.
love having people like you on. And thank you all for stopping by today. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, stay sweet.
Hey y'all, I hope y'all enjoyed this episode on homelessness. Come back next week for part 2 on homelessness with Crystal Ifekoya. See you then.